There's a particular quiet to Sunday evening in Curitiba, the red sunset leaking through the slender apartment windows, the tired hum of cars gliding home along the wet avenida, the last shrill of children's laughter muffled by closing shutters. Our family dinners happened religiously every week, and tonight was no different except for the heaviness pressing between fragments of conversation, sticking to my skin. I sat wedged between my older cousin Paulo and my mother. The table filled with everything ordinary, boiled mandioca, plates of carne de panella, the heat of the small space swirling the scent of cooked beef and spices. My uncle Raoul poured beer steadily into tall glasses, his thick hand never shaking. On his left, my sister Anna speared her rice and avoided my gaze. The scrape of cutlery filled the gaps. We never really talked deeply at these things, never about what mattered. But tonight the silence was electric, everyone waiting for the storm we all saw crawling over the horizon. I felt their eyes on me. My father cleared his throat, the sound brittle as old newspaper. "So," his voice ricocheted across the table, slightly slurred from cheap wine. "Lucas, have you decided yet? The entrance exams, law, engineering, or finally take Raoul's station at the dealership, huh?" A faint laugh ran around the tables. Paulo snorted. My cousin Raphael made a low, flat sound meant to be agreement. I pressed my fork into the soft flesh of the mandioca, willing myself to swallow everything that wanted to rise up. I knew what was expected. I'd heard the questions 100 ways for months, felt them in the way my mother hovered over me, in the texts my father sent after midnight, in Anna's careful avoidance. But tonight something inside me said if I didn't say it now with everyone here I'd never say it at all. I sat up taller. "I'm not applying for law," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, hollow but perfectly clear amid the thickness of the kitchen air. My mother turned, her face pale and small. Raoul smirked, exposing a gold tooth. "Engineering then," Raphael said, frowning. I shook my head. I felt everyone tense, the air prickling with possibility. I exhaled. "No. I'm moving to São Paulo in August to study dance." It was like striking a match in a dark barn. For a second, no one moved, the idea hanging there, as though waiting for someone to swat it down. "Dance?" My father's face went red and shiny. "You're leaving to prance around on a stage?" "This isn't a joke," Anna said carefully, eyes narrowed but searching. "I got into Cisne Negro's training program," I replied, softer now, steady. "Contemporary with choreography focus." Silence this time heavy and twisting. Raoul let out a low whistle as if I'd told a filthy joke. Raphael's face curled, Paulo snickered. "All this time at the studio and we figured it was just a phase." Raoul drew out the word phase with extra depth, almost a snarl. "You're 20 already. Kids dance, Lucas. You don't make a living waving your arms." I kept my gaze down. "It's not about..." "Not about what?" My father's voice rose. "Not about a career, not about helping your mother, your sister. Not about all we did so you could, he stopped, out of breath. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Please, Lucas, this isn't real, you can't survive like that. Dance is a nice thing for school events, for fun, but..." "Please, Phil, how think?" It was the disbelief, not the anger, that burned my throat. The total conviction that this thing I'd nurtured so quietly must be a madness, a brief fever, never something real. I waited for Anna to come to my side, but she only said, "It's embarrassing, Lucas, for them, for us. Imagine what people will say." My own flesh and blood looked at me like I'd chosen to be a criminal. But something about that silence, about letting their certainty fill every corner of that table, made me want to drag air into my lungs until their words couldn't reach. "I'm going," I said, my voice flat as a drumbeat. "I'm sorry. I'm not coming back until I've made something of this." Paulo rolled his eyes. Raoul started laughing, leaning back so far his chair almost toppled. "Fine, fine, go be a ballerina," he called. "See how long you last." My father slammed his fork down. "Enough, go then, see how it ends." I stood up, my legs trembling, and swept out of the house into the Curitiba night, where the cold wind was the first thing to make sense all evening. The city shrank behind me when I left. 10 hours on the night bus, quick glimpses of blurred farmland, narrow town roads, then finally the dizzying scale of São Paulo swallowing me whole. I rented a room the size of a closet in a falling-apart apartment with 2 other hopefuls, Beatriz from Porto Alegre, Gabriel from Fortaleza, both dancers, both trembling with something like fear, too. Every morning at first light, I traced the worn cobbles to Cisne Negro's studio, clutching my meal ticket, a battered gym bag with all I owned. The other trainees eyed me as the country boy, too tall, too stiff, too used to the clipped samba of my neighborhood. But music filled the striplit rehearsal hall, and in the chaos of limbs and sweat, everything that used to bind me dissolved. The body became a language, pain, hunger, exhaustion, yes, but also freedom. Movement felt like memory unleashed from my bones. Still, every rehearsal was war, technique I'd learned from underfunded Curitiba teachers unraveled. I fumbled through modern phrases, missed catches, sweated through criticism from the lead choreographer, a severe woman called leader who never praised, only muttered. There were days I ended rehearsals doubled over in the locker room, fighting tears as the ache in my knees throbbed like a warning. Sometimes Gabriel would find me and say, "It gets worse before it gets easier," and this said with such fragile conviction, we'd both start laughing. Calls from home grew fewer, my mother sent sad face emojis, then nothing, my father didn't call, didn't even answer mine. Anna sent a voice note on my birthday. "You could still come home," she whispered. "We'd forget all this." But I couldn't. Returning early would be a defeat so complete I would never recover. Every night I replayed the dinner table scene, their contempt stealing my resolve more than kindness could have. I cleaned floors to pay rent, waxed mirrors, swept resin dust, mopped bathrooms. On 2 hours of sleep I danced. Every failed audition I told myself pushed me closer to where I needed to be. Months slithered by. The city's rain grew gentle, then angry, then gentle again. Then one evening, Leader called me over as I wrapped my ankle by the studio windows. "You'll lead for the new piece," she said, not so much praise as an observation. I looked up at her, "Me?" She only nodded, beckoning, "You're ready." In that moment, fatigue fell away. I rehearsed until my skin blistered. My parents never answered when I called with the news. My friends at home posted photos of themselves at bars, weddings, graduations. I saved every cent. When the night of the premiere arrived, under the white-hot glare of municipal lights in front of a packed audience, I danced out a story of hunger and hope and felt some wound in me begin to close. People started to notice, small jobs, then bigger ones, studio teaching, then choreography for youth companies. I stopped checking for my family's calls and only let news filter in through Anna, who slowly shifted from skeptical to quietly proud. 7 years, that's how long it took. 7 years of small, persistent steps, failures, yes, but also moments where movement became flight. By the time I was 27, word came that Curitiba's Cultural Foundation wanted me to headline the Autumn Festival. My name in newsletters, in print, on posters I'd have giggled at as a kid. I stared at the invitation for a full hour before I accepted. A show, my show, in my city after all that silence. A chance to come home, not as a lost cause but as someone whole. I called home for the first time in months. My mother answered with a gasp. "Lucas." "They want me back, me," I said, voice trembling. "The foundation." Autumn Gala, 3 nights, I'll be performing new choreography. My company's coming too. She didn't say anything at first, but I heard her crying softly as if afraid joy would offend the memory of her old grief. "Will you come?" I asked. "Of course," she choked. I swallowed. "Invite everyone." My heart beat out my reply. I pictured them, my father, Raul, Raphael, even Paulo with his biting jokes, sitting in the audience, seeing me not as a ghostly disappointment but as something real. The day I returned, even the air seemed different. Curitiba streets shimmered in wet sunlight, jacarandas heavy with purple bloom, tramlines full of office workers, and old couples on their way to nowhere in particular. The old apartment was unchanged, cushions and carpets stubborn against time, faint smell of cleaning products and black coffee clinging to the air. My mother stood in the kitchen, hands fluttering, unsure where to rest them. She hugged me as if afraid I'd vanish. My father hung back. His hair had slipped to grey at the temples, skin slackened, voice a little softer. He nodded his hello, searching for something to say and finding only silence. I slept in my old room that night, surrounded by the leftovers of childhood, cracked trophy, faded soccer posters, the creak of parquet as I moved across the floor. I lay awake, tracing the ceiling cracks, listening to the distant rumble of buses, preparing for what would come. The first show sold out faster than the foundation expected. Everyone came. Not just my family but neighbors, old acquaintances, Anna's friends squeezed along the back row. Even Raul bought a ticket, pausing at the entrance as if still expecting someone to jump out and declare it all a prank. Backstage was a fever. My dancers, half from São Paulo, half from smaller cities, warmed up nervously. The crew buzzed, swapping cues, shifting lights. Minute by minute, the audience filed in. Chatting, laughing, old classmates craning their necks to spot familiar faces. Just before curtain Anna slipped backstage. She hugged me hard, nails digging into my back. You did it, she whispered, her voice raw and honest in a way she'd never let me see. I pressed my forehead to hers. Come watch. The opening chord boomed through the speakers, a low, resonant note born of heartache, the melody I'd composed and choreographed in São Paulo on sleepless nights. The curtain rose, the world shrank to stage light and velvet hush. We danced out my own story, fragile at first, movements clipped and uncertain, broadening into defiance, hope, even laughter. My body flowed with the music, with every pain and furnace I'd walked through. My dancers lifted each other, not just through motion but through gratitude. We twisted and leapt, every step a prayer, every finish a rebirth. In the last scene we scattered across the floor, as I'd once felt scattered in the world, then found each other, forming a line, resolute and unbreakable. I stepped out alone, met the lights and let every wound, every memory course through me. As the music faded, silence washed over the hall, time slowed, someone coughed in the back, then applause erupted, wild and generous. It thundered, washing over me in waves. I looked into the front rows, my mother had her hands over her mouth. My father clapped, tears cutting tracks down his cheek. Raoul stared forward, arms folded, but I saw his jaw trembling, saw him blink twice hard. After the curtain fell, I walked into the lobby. People gathered, buzzing and electric in the aftermath. My childhood friends, neighbors, strangers, all jostling to shake my hand to say they saw something beautiful. For the first time, I belonged in their eyes. But it was the moment I saw my father crossing the lobby, moving against the tide, that the full weight hit me. He stopped in front of me, face raw and uncertain. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. He reached out, placed a hand on my shoulder. I was wrong, he said quietly. His voice sounded distant, as if traveling from somewhere else. Lucas, I was wrong. You did more than any of us dreamed. I don't remember what I said back, or if I said anything at all. I just stood there, the applause echoing in my ears, letting forgiveness settle between us like gentle rain. Families, real families, aren't made atop easy days. They're born in the silences, in the stubbornness forged by years of being misunderstood, in the heartbreak of being rejected, and the miracle of being reclaimed. That night I rode home with my family, the car warm around us, old wounds dissolving in shared silence. Outside, the city lights painted everything gold. I was home, not as a sorrow or a punchline or a failed son, but as someone who had dared to say yes to himself when everyone else said no. There would be more dances, more struggle, more nights where the world felt impossibly heavy. But for now, we drove together back to our yellow-lit apartment, and for the first time in years, everything felt wide open and good.